everybody, and welcome to our library talk on the topic of our children's mental health during challenging times. My name is Linda Breathnach, and this is Melissa Moore. Melissa, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi Linda, thanks for that. Hi, my name is Melissa Moore. I'm an accredited play therapist and I'm based in County Meath. I work with children from the age of 3 right up into the teenage years who may have difficulty with their emotions or with their behaviours. And I also work with their parents alongside that, providing support to them and giving them ideas to be using at home. I also offer separate parenting sessions for people who their child may not need therapy, but they just need a little bit of support at that particular time. I do lots of different workshops for schools and preschools and for parents and for children in, I suppose, normal times. And I also have been doing some online workshops for some of the businesses who would like to support their staff with, I suppose, just with stuff that's going on at home in terms of parenting. So that's where I'm at the moment. I also have 3 children, so I suppose I have a lot of hands-on experience as well as the educational piece.
Thanks, Melissa. And just to introduce myself, I'm Linda Breathnach. I'm a counsellor psychotherapist working in the field about 20 years. I've been working with couples, individuals and groups in therapeutic and corporate spaces. More recently, like yourself, Melissa, meeting the demand and supporting employers and supporting their management and employee teams and getting to grips with all things mental health, running online workshops and supporting them around issues like resilience, anxiety, work-life balance, all that goes with that. And yes, like you, I have children too. I have 4, so we have 7 children between us. So we are living the juggle that we're talking about. It's thanks to, just want to thank Fingal Libraries and the Healthy Ireland Initiative as well for inviting us along. I love having these chats with you, Melissa. It's always a healthy grounding exercise for me, and hopefully it will be for the viewers as well. So let's start with, we're looking at a couple of questions that parents have been coming up with time and time again since the first lockdown, I'd say as well. So we just picked a few key ones that have been coming up just for you to help people understand around supporting their children with mental health during times like this. What would you say to parents who are struggling with getting that balance right between everything that we're juggling at the moment, homeschooling, work, home and family life at the moment?
Firstly, I suppose to acknowledge to parents that what we're being asked to do is really tough and really, really difficult. Nothing about it is normal. We haven't got a book at the beginning of this last March and said, here you go, that's how you do it. It's unprecedented times, and particularly at the moment when we're asked to homeschool our children at home, I think it's really, really tough. It's unfair. It's unprecedented. We haven't been here before. And I suppose just to acknowledge that piece to start off with. And I suppose the other thing is that, the majority of us aren't educators. I know most of us aren't in that field. We're not trained like that. So we don't have the experience that teachers have. Teachers are highly trained in their particular field. And I wouldn't attempt to try and step in and do their jobs because I would fall at the first hurdle, to be quite honest. So I suppose what we're being asked to do is help our children with their education. And I think that word help is the word that we really need to look at and zone in at and remind ourselves, when we're having those unproductive or stressful days, that's what we're asked to do, help. And I think if you were to ask yourself a question every day, when you get up to start doing schoolwork with your children, are you always trying to do your best for them? And if the answer is yes, which I presume most days it is, if not all days, that word beginning with a big G called guilt, stick it away in its box and lock it up, because that's all you can do. That's all we can expect of each other. And I think parenting goes hand in hand with that word guilt. No matter what age our children are, even when they're into adulthood, we always have that sense of guilt. So just to say that, to start with, I suppose looking at things like routine. So for me, routine is the number one thing really So, you know, you have your children up and ready. A loose routine, it doesn't have to be really, but you know that the children know that for 9 or 9:30 that they've to be fed and dressed and sitting down at the table or the space that they've been allocated to do their work in, and that they're ready to work away. You know, and I suppose it depends on the age of the children as well. You know, if you're working with small, you know, junior infants, senior infants, first class even, they might need a lot more breaks built into their day than what, you know, 9, 10, 11-year-olds might do. So it might be a case of sitting down and doing something for 15, 20 minutes work-wise with them, and then having a break and keep going like that. But I think it's really important to have those breaks, and they need to be movement breaks as well. Those movement breaks, they can be little things like just going up the stairs to fetch something from the bedroom, or using the bathroom upstairs, or, you know, going in and getting something in the back garden for you, or, you know, a little run around the back garden. They don't have to be big things, but what it does, it gets that little bit of energy or frustration out, which allows them then to concentrate more.
Yeah.
So that's really, really important. What I would say then is, you know, try and build something in the afternoon fun wise, particularly exercise. I think it's really important to get out and about, you know, and get some fresh air on your face. I think that makes things so much easier. It also de-stresses you know, so you can let the kids run around and run that bit of energy off. And, you know, if their children are home that are in secondary school, a lot of them can be kind of left to their own devices. Some of them, the other ones that kind of, you know, are hanging over the table and reluctant to do anything for you. I think it's really important to remember as parents not to be constantly, you know, nagging them, because I think what that will do is just damage your relationship.
Yeah.
So it's important again to remember that you're helping, that you're encouraging, that you're negotiating rather than telling them or doing it for them. So things like, you know, I can imagine there's a lot of houses with you know, arguments around screens and can I go on my Xbox and PlayStation and whatnot. I suppose one thing that I have learned over the years with the reluctant ones to do their work is, you know, kind of negotiate and bargain with them in terms of, I think screens is probably the only thing we have at the moment to be able to bargain with, really. So it's a case of, look, you have to do your work till lunchtime, and if you get up to 11 o'clock, I give you 20 minutes on your Xbox at big break. So at 12:30 you can have 20 minutes, and kind of work it like that and see if that encourages them a little bit. But there's other practical things that you can do around making things easier, because you're going to have days that are much more stressful than others, and especially if you're working as well and trying to look after the kids and organize the house as well. So it's, you know, it's little things like being organized. So if you can organize stuff the night before, so for instance, that, you know, you might have the cereal bowls out on the table for the following morning, or you might have the kids books set up and ready for them to go in the morning. One of my favorites is when I'm cooking dinners, that I'd often throw an extra portion in. And, you know, if you're making lasagna or a bolognese or something, you might make a double one and throw the rest of it into the freezer. So on those days where you're just exhausted or just stressed and fed up, that you just reach to the freezer and pull it out. And it's just something that it's so small, but it makes such a big difference on those days. And look, we all have them days. I think we all have those days, no matter what. And it's all right. It's okay. It's normal. If you were saying to me, like, if parents are ringing and telling me, do you know what, Linda, if they were saying to me, like, everything is fabulous, everything is brilliant, I'm loving this, every day is perfect, I'd be going, really?
I'd be more worried, yeah.
Yeah, because it's not natural. You know, we all have moods. Our kids have moods. You know, some days they'll get up and they'll run through their homework and it's done in an hour, and other days it might take 3. And that's all right. And I suppose the other thing that I would say is, if you're finding that, you know, your frustration now or your child's is starting to boil up while doing work, just walk away, close the book and walk away and leave it be.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
nothing bad is going to happen. It doesn't have to be immaculate and perfect and, you know, and all done. But I suppose it is really, really tough when you're, especially when you're working, you know, and both of us are experiencing that as well at the minute, you know. And one thing for me is bedtimes, and bedtimes are kind of sacred nearly in my house. Maybe the weekends are a bit different, but during the week they go to bed when they would have went to bed when they were going to school anyhow. And for me, that time in their bed is my time. So that's my time to have my cup of tea in peace, you know, read my book or sit down and watch my you know, my program that I've been looking to. So I think it's, you know, it's really, really important to have that switch off time for parents. And sometimes we think of self-care as being selfish and greedy, but it's really, really not. It's actually really, really important.
Yeah.
So just to reiterate that, and lower your expectations of yourself, and accept that you're going to have rough days. And these WhatsApp groups, the parents' WhatsApp groups for the classes, I mean, they can be a godsend at times, and other times they can be just an absolute nuisance. And I would say to parents, stick it on mute for 8 hours of a day and come back to it like when you're in the right frame of mind. You don't need all that going on, And we were talking about this the other day, my Johnny did this, this, and this, and this, and in fact, Johnny probably isn't doing all that. So it's really important, like, not to compare yourself.
Because you're not comparing like for starters.
No.
Yeah.
No, absolutely not. So
I think I've taken loads. Even I know this, we know this, but I've taken loads again, loads of healthy reminders. I think the self-care piece for me, obviously, you know how passionate I am about that. And you're right, a lot of people mix that up with selfishness, and it's not about being selfish. It's not about putting yourself first. It's being equally as kind to yourself as you would be to a friend. Is a good way of, what would you say to a friend if they were having this tough day? And, I've been there myself, and I know there's lots of parents who are probably in that day where it's a nightmare. It's falling apart, homework, schoolwork, housework, work, the stuff we get paid for. And you feel like an absolute failure. And of course, it's normal and understandable to feel that and to feel out of your depth and out of control and feel like things are going wrong. But exactly like what you're saying, that's the second part I'm taking from what you're saying, which is good enough is good enough. And there's lots written about the good enough parent. And you said, the question I would ask, are you doing your best? And I could nearly feel my own defenses, or I don't know if it's a mix of what you're hearing on the ground as well. I am doing my best, but, the routine's not perfect. The diet's not perfect. Whenever I have these conversations, I'm always pinpointing to myself, I need to improve on this. I need to improve on that. But I'm doing my best. And it's lovely to hear you remind us of that the best is good enough. And even if we can say that to ourselves on those really tough days, like you say, put the books down, walk away. Now, I know we can't always do that with our work, but prioritize and just get through it, isn't it? It's just survive sometimes. And I keep saying that everything else will fall into place if we just get through it, if we just put one foot in front of the other and mind our mental, emotional, psychological and physical health. And then everything else can be figured out later. So obviously we don't want to throw the book at it and give up fully. But if we give ourselves permission to acknowledge that it's okay to have an off day or an off hour or even an off week, but how we talk to ourselves during that time is what's going to either escalate it further into a longer time or help it to pass quicker. So if we can be compassionate and kind to ourselves, which is exactly the message you're trying to give there, Melissa. And the last thing I'm taking from everything that you've said there's like a big list of things, but the other one that sticks out for me is that nagging thing. And I know I'm guilty of it. And especially when you're juggling, and it's like every time I see a particular child, it's like, did you do that work yet? Did you do that work yet? And I might only have asked him 10 minutes ago, but I nearly forget that I've asked him. And it's, because I'm not fully listening, I'm not fully engaged. I could be juggling everything at one time. So that nagging, it's a nice reminder that it's about empowering our kids as well, isn't it? And letting them feel good about getting things done and having that choice. And because I think there's huge life learning in this for them around that self-discipline piece and independent learning and all of that. And I'm sure there'll be lots of research done into it, but to see my 9-year-old doing, projects and stuff and learning things that, he was doing an article there, a newspaper article, and the title, and I know they'd be doing it in school, but to do that creativity piece on his own without sharing it with all his friends in school, like there's a lot to be said for that as well. Like, and he didn't have much input from me, if I'm honest, because I was, juggling and doing other things too. And I think you're right. I think sometimes leaving them to it actually, and not, kind of putting that pressure on ourselves, which I know is something else that we'll cover in one of the other questions. But
but I suppose it's just when you're saying that, it's step back and ask yourself, are you actually doing too much academically with your children? Are you, hovering over them the whole time?
Yeah.
Or can you just leave them be, let them get on with it? If they're at that age, just let them get on with it and come back to it. I give you an example yesterday, Linda, of how much I suppose our children are actually learning while they're at home. I was doing a PowerPoint yesterday, and one of my smallest one, who is 11, was standing over me and she was laughing. I said, what are you laughing at? And she says, well, I give you a crash course. I was like,
And she's
yeah, I
11.
probably could do one.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
took us 10 years to learn it, and
yeah,
they're learning
yeah,
it in the blink of an
yeah.
eye. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's great. It is. There's a lot of positives, and I suppose it's very easy for us to focus on the downsides, but as you said, it's very easy for that to spiral. And for our mood as a parent to overflow onto our child, it's really, really important that when you're having a bad day, that you're in tune and in check with your feelings.
You've
So
hit the nail on the head there, Melissa. And even just when you were saying there a second ago, if we're hovering over our child, like what is that about in terms of our, is it our wanting to put the best side out for our child? We don't want the teacher judging us. Is it bringing up issues? The therapist in me who works with adults all the time, is it bringing up issues from our own schooling, from our own experience with teachers? Are we feeling like we need to, we're not good enough and we want to prove ourselves, or we need to prove that our child is good enough? And the teacher already knows our child very well from the time they've had with them since September. But what is that? Like, why are we, if we are starting to go into that kind of perfectionist mode with our child and not letting them, kind of to their own and make their own mistakes, there's buttons being pushed that we can be really empowered by taking the opportunity to acknowledge that in ourselves and keeping that separate from our child.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's huge though, isn't it? It's like
huge. It's something I could talk about this all day, but
yeah, I know. So we've another question then around kids' behavior and how people are noticing sometimes the challenge, with everything that's going on, their child's behavior is deteriorating over lockdown. And the question that we keep hearing over and over is, should I be concerned? What can I do?
Yeah.
What are you saying to people who come to you with questions like that?
And I'm getting a lot of those questions, Linda, even from parents that I don't know, that I've had no interactions with their children. They haven't been coming for therapy, so I've been getting an awful lot of phone calls the last 2 or 3 weeks, just parents looking for support around behaviours. I suppose the first thing to do is acknowledge how difficult it is for our children. We know it's tough for us. We know we're struggling much more this time round than last year. But we can verbalise that. Our children, a lot of them won't have the vocabulary to be able to do that. And you'd be lucky if the older ones can, or if they come to you to say it. So acknowledge with your children. So say to your children, look, I know this is really, really hard. You're not getting to see your friends. You're trying to learn your maths on the computer. You're not seeing granny. So say it. So my thing that I always say to parents, no matter what they come to me for, is say what you see. Because I can guarantee you 9 out of 10 times what you're saying and thinking is probably what your child is feeling, but they just may not be able to have the words to actually express that. So, and then I suppose, just take a stand back. It's like that iceberg image. So every behavior, good or negative, that your child has an underlying message. So just take a couple of moments, try and bite the tongue before you jump in to reprimand, and try and figure out what is that message. So a lot of the time it's frustration, anger with the inappropriate behaviors, feeling powerless, which we all kind of feel now at the moment. So you can understand that life is changing and evolving every day, and we're not getting a say in it at all. I can't even choose what friend to see anymore, because it's just it's not happening. But I suppose the big emphasis for me, again, I know I've already mentioned it, is the routine. And I think when our children are going through tough times, and especially now because a lot of us are working from home as well, it's so easy to kind of take the foot off the pedal and maybe not be sticking to rules that you would have had, or maybe respond in a different way than what you would have before. So I would say to yes, obviously that there has to be some kind of allowance, but they don't have to be ongoing, and they certainly don't have to be big ones. Keep to your basic rules and your routines in your house. It will make things so much easier for you, but also for the children. Children thrive on routine, consistency, predictability, that piece. All of what we don't have in the outside world at the moment. So, if
it's
all
stability,
of that,
isn't it? It feels stable, it feels secure when they have that.
Yeah, absolutely. But
Yeah.
if you're not providing that, or you've taken the foot off the pedal a little bit at home, and you're not providing that fully, you could understand how children inside are kind of having a bit of a wobble, because they don't have it outside either now at all. So just go back and have a look at your rules and your boundaries, and start going there, enforcing them again. My other favorite saying is name it to tame it. So it's, when you're seeing kind of inappropriate or unwanted behaviors in your children, that you acknowledge it, and this is all about the wording. So and it's not something that comes to us all instantaneously. It's work, it's hard work. So it's I can see, Johnny, that you're getting really mad today. You're angry because you're shouting at me, or you're hitting your brother. It's okay to be angry, but it's certainly not okay to behave like that. And give an alternative behavior that is okay. So it might be that they go out and kick a ball around, or it might be that they go and hit the pillow, or whatever the case, whatever will work for your child. So it's really, really important to do that. Not only are you correcting the behavior, you're acknowledging how your child is feeling. So if you acknowledge how your child is feeling, they feel heard, they feel listened to, and that in turn raises self-esteem. They feel understood, but you're also giving them the language. So you're giving them the emotional literacy that maybe was lacking. So you're giving them the name of the feeling, but you're also managing to link the feeling with the behavior. So, and this is how they become very literate in their emotions, and become aware of their emotions. So you're linking it. So, you can see that Johnny is screaming, or his face has gone really red. So when that starts happening the next time, then he might actually be able to identify it much quicker and stop it from happening, or put in a coping skill. So that's the other thing. I would also say, what's your child's exposure to the news? Are they hearing the news all of the time? I know, going back last year, like when we were all kind of hanging in kind of for the news a couple of times a day, and watching for the numbers and the deaths. And I think some of us are kind of gone a little bit like that now again since Christmas. And that's okay for us as an adults. But, I know that if I was to sit 3 times or twice a day even to listen to those numbers, that would have a negative impact on my mental health. Absolutely. Yeah. And then that in turn flows over to your child and to their mood, and then that's where the behaviors start.
Yeah.
So just have a look and see, what are they hearing? What are they seeing the numbers? Are they seeing the news every day? Are they hearing you talking to daddy in the kitchen and they're in the sitting room, and maybe you think that they're not overhearing anything? Are you being really anxious when you're going out? Are they picking up on all of that? So all of that is, feeds into the behaviors, and I know it's really, really hard. It really is, but I suppose it's just to be conscious of and be aware, because those small little things of even, that you don't watch the news until the kids are in bed at 9 o'clock, they make such a difference. But in the same time, don't avoid the conversation of COVID, because it's out there and everybody's talking about it and everybody knows about it. And sure, look, we're wearing our masks in the shops and everything, so they'll know that. And if you don't talk about it, what the message it actually sends is that there's something really big here to worry about. Like, this is so big that my mom and dad won't even talk about it.
Yeah.
It must be massive, and I'm not talking about that. So you want your children to be talking about, but obviously it has to be very age appropriate. So yeah, so it's kind of,
and this lockdown is kind of different to the first lockdown. I remember my little one in the first lockdown saying, if I see that yellow ad again, the yellow ad and the warnings about COVID, and it was so in your face. It was on in every ad break. It was even on in YouTube and all of that. And she's just like, I don't want to see that yellow warning anymore. And I think back to what you were saying about allowances, and we made allowances, and we had to do that in lockdown. We were in crisis the first time. We're still in crisis, but it's more normalized crisis now. And that, the kind of, letting them off and just, sure, we're out of routine, sure, we don't even know what's happening. That was all really normal first time round. But we have to, because it's going on so long, you're right, we have to kind of reel it in a bit and put a little bit more structure. But isn't it a delicate balancing act between trying to get that routine, because we're kind of contradicting ourselves a little bit, that it's really important to have routine, but it's okay to have an off day too. And it sounds to me like what you're saying is really just to have that awareness. So if our children are acting up, that it's not because, oh God, because I'm not in routine and I need to change that and fix that. And while it is great to improve it and to have that awareness, but isn't it just an awareness thing that it's, you know, it's an understanding and kind of being able to acknowledge that with your child, that we're all a bit upside down at the moment. It's all a bit crazy, but you know, let's do what we can to make this day a bit easier, or this hour or whatever. And just, and in my experience, that bit that you're saying, kind of responding to the child with empathy, I notice you're angry, I notice the red cheeks, I noticed the way you just threw that against the door or whatever. Sometimes they just crumble with that, don't they? Because they're in this like, and then you just kind of go, I noticed that that's going on. And they'll just, you know, really what's underneath it might be sadness or fear or, you know, overwhelm. And it gives them that chance.
It could be as simple as being overtired or being hungry.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, that's what I'm saying. We just need to kind of step back. Sometimes we assume that they're behaving in a way because of A, B, or C. You know, they're really worried about this, or this is a big deal to them. But actually, it can be so much more basic. So you know, it's good to clarify with them as well.
And
like,
kind of overanalyze.
What was that all about? Like, you know, afterwards when they've calmed down, obviously there's no point in being in the midst of it, because they won't even hear you or acknowledge you. But I suppose
actually, even the eating routine, if we're not having the regular meals, there's one child in my family that we all go, oh God, did he have his breakfast yet? You know, or did he have his lunch? Because we will know by the steam coming out of his ears. Someone give him a banana. You know?
Yeah. I have one here as well, just like that. And would go all day quite happily not eat until dinner time.
Know when he's hungry. Yeah. But we all know.
But there is, it's you know, it's diet, it's sleep, and exercise. They're the three really, really important ones. And obviously, if we're not getting enough nutritious food, it's going to make us cranky. If we're not getting enough sleep, it's going to make us cranky. And exercise burns off all that crankiness. You know, so they're really three really important. But I just want to say something else in it before I go on and I forget about it. You know, I've had a couple of parents in the last, I'd say, month ring me and say to me, look, I'm a bit worried about how my child is playing. And it turns out what they've been describing was a child that was playing out scenes of death. Somebody had died, and another one was teacher was really sick from COVID. And the parents were really concerned about that. And I suppose what I was saying to them was, actually, you know what, this is really normal. It's really healthy. It's their way. It's their language. You know, it's young kids up to about 12, like 11 or 12, depending developmentally. It's their way of talking to us and telling us how they're feeling. So what they're actually doing is really, really productive. And they're expressing their feelings, their emotions. They're trying to figure out what's going on in the world around them, and they're figuring out ways to manage that. So if that's happening in your house, don't worry about it. Just sit back and watch and let it play out, because they need that. Otherwise, what we do is and so I describe it as like a pressure cooker, where we don't allow our children to get those feelings and emotions out. What happens is they're actually being suppressed, and they're being pushed down into the bottom of their tummy, and eventually it's going to that pressure cooker is going to explode, and you're going to be the one on the receiving end of it. So just to say, that's really, really normal. I see that kind of stuff going on here all the time in the play therapy room, and I suppose that's why play therapy works so well, is because it's all done through play and there's no judgment around it. So your children will process things and work through them, and when they're ready and they understand it, they'll come out the other side of it. So allow them to have that time and provide those spaces even for them to do that.
I've definitely witnessed some LOLs and Scooby-Doo figures with COVID in this house a few times over the last year or so, and it's just, you're right. And there's a line I use when working with adults, that depression is suppression and the best way to help it is expression. So everything that we're looking at here is expressing emotions in an appropriate way, isn't it? It's about giving permission and space. And I think sometimes our generation anyway didn't grow up with that learning, that it's okay to have, you know, kind of uncomfortable feelings, but the behaviors need to be managed, or the spiraling thoughts if we feel anxious. Because often we might be tempted to say to our child, oh, don't be worrying, don't be crying over that, don't be feeling, you know, or if it's a scary movie, don't be silly. It's not scary, but it is scary. And then if you're telling them not to feel scared, they might feel more scared. There's something wrong with them for finding it scary. So it's about kind of acknowledging the empathy, but not kind of not give, like you say, the child who hits something, or, you know, who's, you know, so it's kind of teach them how to learn other ways of expressing it, isn't it?
And I suppose it's about how the parent you know, kind of goes with that. If we can avoid the words of no, you can't, no, no, that's not right. So it's about kind of rephrasing the words you use, I suppose, to get the same message across, because that's going to get their backs up automatically. But I suppose if you're telling your kid to stop crying, don't be worrying, don't be silly, it'll be all fine. You know, that's all well intended, you know, and I've probably done it myself. But I suppose the underlying message that you're giving your child is actually, do you know what? You shouldn't be feeling like that. That feeling's not okay to have. Which is exactly what we want them to do. We want them to get it out of their system.
And is there something else you were saying around, you know, when you were talking about the rules and the guidelines, the boundaries in the house, involving your children in it, you know?
Oh yeah, yes. So I say to parents, you know, sit down with your kids and ask them, what do you think the rules need to be? And they can be around anything. They can be around schoolwork, or, you know, homeschool, or, you know, going out and what time have they to be in out when they are.
We've definitely had those conversations around consoles, PlayStation and that, because, you know, and we got them to agree the limit, because we were noticing it. Again, the allowances were made because our lives are normally so busy with sports and activities and whatever, they hardly ever played with the consoles. And then we went into lockdown, everything was taken away, and it was the only way they could communicate with their friends. And to be honest, it was one of my favorite sounds through the wall, was the giggles and the laughter on the console. But I was nearly so enthusiastic about it that it kind of, the balance was off then, and we had to kind of have a little regroup and kind of go, okay, we need to put a limit on this. What do you think is fair? What I think is fair? How does it fit with the others having a go on it as well? And it worked really well, actually, because they felt that it was them agreeing to it. They came up with the suggestion. Now, they were well guided in coming up with that suggestion, but I think it was better than me saying, right, that's it, I'm turning it off, or, you know, switching off the Wi-Fi, or taking the power away, literally the power and the Wi-Fi. It would have been, it would have just escalated it, I think. It would have become a them and us thing.
But if you can get them to feel like they're the ones making the decisions, then they buy into it, and they're much more likely to stick with it, rather than you getting into that negativity of, no, you can't have
like
it.
A power battle.
You know, here we go again. It's a power battle, and it goes back to, actually all it's doing is getting their back up, but you're damaging your relationship with them as well by constantly at that same thing with them. So, you know, it's trying to think outside the box really now, like, and you know, look, screens pretty much is the only thing they have at the moment, and it's their method of communication for their friends. I don't see the harm in it, as long as there's boundaries around it, I suppose. And that's the important piece, that they're not on it for 8 and 9 hours a day, like.
And that it's, I like the verbal communication, like we would put a phone, so they might have 4 people on the screen, their friends from school, 4 people on the screen, so they can see them. Well, sometimes there's a ceiling on the picture or whatever, but they can chat to them while they're playing. So it's not just text either, because things can get, I've seen that, I'm talking about the older kids now, of course, but I've seen that get misinterpreted, and I've got boys, and I understand it's even more complicated with girls around that, you know, the kind of the back and forth on text conversations. But just actually having a conversation and being able to see each other's faces, even if it is on a screen while they're playing a game. I just think that was just such a luxury to have, that we wouldn't have had a few years earlier, you know, during this time. But you're right, balance and all that goes with that. It's never ending though. It is like a tightrope of balance, that you're kind of, you're either one side of it or not. We're never fully in the middle. We're always, it's an ongoing challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, but as long as you're aware of that, Linda, I think there's no harm in it either. Do you know, like, there's none of us are perfect. Like, do you know, like, me and you aren't perfect by a long shot either. Do you know, even though we've got all the education experience.
I was yesterday though, but I'm not today. No, I'm not.
You know, but like, it's okay to have them off days. Don't beat yourself up over it. It's part of life.
Yeah. So now to the next big one. And I can't believe we're here again, because we were here and you were here with the Leaving Cert last year. I was here with a Junior Cert last year. And here we are again. There's not much information. We're in that limbo, that place of anxiety. And there's a lot of parents really worried about, you know, and it's a vulnerable age as well. And there's a lot of emphasis being put on it as the biggest exam of your life. And the anxiety, the unknowns, the spiraling thoughts, you know, how would you know, parents are really worried about the impact on their young people. What would you say to them?
And I suppose I was one of them parents last year as well. You know, I was really worried, and you know, I suppose yeah, it's about being tuned into your own emotions again. Be really careful.
And can I just say, Melissa, it's just great to even hear you say, I'm sure for other parents out there who are in that boat right now, it must be great to hear that you were one of those parents and here you are now and everything is okay.
But geez, Linda, I was going off my head last year with the worry of it, and how unfair I thought the whole system was, and worried sick that she wouldn't get the points. And oh look, my head was spiraling, running away with myself. But I suppose because I'm in the field that I'm in, I was able to pull that back and put on the happy, it'll be all okay feeling when I was talking to her. And look, it was okay.
You did acknowledge how hard it was as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really important to actually say to your kids, look, this is crap. This is really, really difficult. You know what? I can understand why you're upset and you're worried. I am too. But something, we have no control over this. And I think it's really, as an adult or as a parent, to really home in what you have got control over, and whether it's, you're saying all this through gritted teeth just to support your teen, well and good, and you go off to bed at night, worried about her, but it's our job to keep them calm and relaxed and stable, so the things that you have control over are, to continue as if things were going ahead and if the exams are going ahead, because it's an evolving situation, just the same as COVID is. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but plan that it is going ahead, and if that changes, well and good, at least you're prepped, and encourage them to study and continue as if they were preparing for exams. Encourage rest, encourage exercise, and encourage that they come and they talk to you, and that you're being there and you're bringing up the cup of tea and you're putting the hand on the back, as an expression of support, I suppose, and that they know that you're there to talk to them whenever they need to, or they need to come down and have a cry on your shoulder, or whatever the case is, that you're the strong, supportive person in all of this.
Yeah, and can I just clarify, just because I would have met parents as well in that way, that to make sure that people don't misunderstand that they have to be strong all the time, but that they separate their issues and their worries and feelings and concerns from their child, from their young person, that they're not projecting them onto the young person. Yeah, you're right, this system is a mess, I'm going to go complain, that it'll escalate, that the young person starts thinking thoughts that they never thought before, or worries that they mightn't have considered, that it's about the young person when you're supporting the young person, and that we as parents use our supports to make sure. So I just wanted to clarify that, that we're strong in the presence, strong in our vulnerability as well with our young people, but that we also use our supports separately. So we go and rant and rave to our best friend or our mother, or ring a helpline or whatever, and just get it out, but not to our young person, because we're putting it onto them.
And that,
just want to make sure that people don't misunderstand that. I know that that's what you mean, and I know how well you handled it with your daughter. And I think what I'm hearing from you is it's a bit about just staying in the moment as well. It's like what you're saying there. Well, all you can do is the information that we have right now is that it's going ahead. Let's stay in the study zone and do what we can to make today good, today better.
And that's it. And I suppose, if all comes to all, I think the message that we really need to get across to them is, no matter what decision is taken by the government, we'll deal with this as a family and we'll get through this as a family. And I think that needs to be the underlying, message to all teens out there that are prepping for, whether it's junior or leaving cert or college or whatever it is. And
I know that you definitely had that line, even though you felt the anxiety, there was so many unknowns. Where the hell is she going to end up? I really wanted to work out for her. It was your worries, it was her worries. But that kind of thing, as trusting, even though you don't know the how, the why, the when, but trusting that things will be okay. And that maybe this time next year it'll just be a story. I don't think you're quite there yet. I think you're still recovering a little bit, but you're nearly there.
It's like we had bumps on the way, and some of the predicted grades didn't go the way she wanted them to go, but in actual fact what ended up happening in the end was the best case scenario. Now I wasn't thinking that at the time, but it actually is, and where she is, she's delighted to be.
And none of us could have told you that then.
No,
you just had to
God,
blindly trust.
No, I couldn't have told myself that then even. No. But so I mean that's there's a lot that you can do even when you're thinking there isn't.
And but I think I love that thing that we will get through this as a family. And again, it's back to that survival thing that I was saying. It's like, we will get through this. We don't know how, but like, all bets are off. Life is not now, it's not the way we used to know it. So we just have to go through it one step at a time and get through it this time. And everything else can kind of, we can't answer that yet. We just have to get through today, and tomorrow will take care of itself.
And that's it.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line.
But that it's with support.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Absolutely.
So any last tips that you'd like to tell us around maybe around young children as well? I know you have a lovely
my favorite
there. Yeah.
I love this. So I call this, I use this in 101 different ways. This is my positivity jar. So rather than dwelling on the negatives of COVID and being stuck at home, if we can try and focus on the positives. So at the end of the evening, every evening, my kids get a slip of paper and they write on it something that they enjoyed about the day. So you're ending your day before you go to bed on the positive rather than the negative. So I have things in here like, I read my book at last. I enjoyed making the buns and I really liked my dinner. So that's it. And at the end of the week, then you have, you've got a whole pile in it. So when I actually sit them down sometimes at the weekend, and I'll take them out and I'll actually read them back to them. And it's, how did you feel about that? Actually, we did an awful lot of nice stuff this week, didn't we? So it's just a little way of kind of focusing on the good things. And I suppose just in terms of the behaviors and trying to keep them in tow as well, I find mindfulness really, really good. So it can be like breath work. So if you build breath work into your day every day as part of your routine, when they are having those wobbly days, you can direct them to use that. But if you haven't practiced it when they're in a calm state of mind, it's not going to work. So it needs to be built in. So a lot of parents I know build it into their morning routine now. So it might be, when
Brilliant.
they're having their breakfast. So you're talking maybe 5 breaths. It's nothing massive. It takes 30 seconds. But if you can make it fun for children, especially the teens will get it and they'll understand what breath work is. But the younger kids won't get it and they probably won't have interest in it even. So if you can make it fun, so use bubbles. So if you get a box of bubbles, plant them around the house. So if they're in the bedroom, they have easy access to one, or if they're in the sitting room, they've got easy access. And it's, it's about, mom or dad or, whoever is looking after them to say, right, let's get the bubbles. Who can blow the biggest? Who can blow the smallest? Who's pink? Who can get to the back of the garden fastest blowing them? So it's that sort of stuff, because they're still using their breath. So it's just, or another one that I have, actually, I love this, and it's just a little bit of tin foil scrunched up. So sometimes I get on the floor, so you're lying on your tummy, or you can use the table, put it on the table and get down, no hands, but you're blowing it across the table. So it's that fun thing again, who's the slowest at doing it, who can go the slowest like a snail, who can go the fastest. And again, it's getting the breath.
It loosens up all the tension.
Yeah, but what's really important, Linda, is the little conversation that you have afterwards. So you're linking how they're feeling afterwards with the activity. So, God, I can see her really calm now after doing that. I wonder, could we try that the next time we get angry? So you're giving them tips and tools for life, as you're going on, so they're just some really basic ones. The other one, as a lot of people would know, is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, where you're using your senses. Like if you're out for a walk, you might say to them, can you tell me, pick 5 things you can hear, or name 4 things you can see, and go through the senses like that, going down to 1. So
that's kind of like a regulation tool as well.
Yeah, real grounding thing. So that again, that's something that when you can see your child's behavior getting going, I suppose, or it's dipping, or if you're sitting at the table and he's getting frustrated doing the maths, you might put the pencil down. You might say, okay, listen, see, can we hear 5 things? But you're distracting them as well as regulating them. So it's a great technique to use. But they're just a few easy things to be doing at home.
I love them, and I think we did the positivity jar when I spoke to you about this last year, but I think we need to take it back out again. Yeah, it's great. I think that's it, Melissa. Is there anything else you want to say to parents at the moment?
I think the last thing to say is, give yourself a break. I think that's the main message is, accept we're in a pandemic. We're all in a pandemic, and we will have bad days and we'll have great days. And that is absolutely 100% okay.
And I don't know if you noticed, I took a huge breath just before I asked you that last question, so I can feel myself calming down. And hopefully lots of parents out there listening are getting the benefit of your, you're such a gentle, warm approach and helping everybody just to kind of take a deep breath. We've got this. We will get through it. Tomorrow's another day.
Yeah, and I suppose just to say to parents as well, like, you can see my Facebook page, and there's my contact details are there behind us. But like, don't be afraid to send me a little message or something if you're struggling with something. And we'll try and work through it together. It doesn't matter where you're based, or we have technology now. We can do it on Zoom. So
yeah, absolutely, yeah, and they'd be very lucky to get you. That's a really kind offer. Thanks, Melissa, and thanks to everybody for tuning in. Yeah, I thought you were going to say.
I was just going to thank Fingal Library for having us again, and with the Healthy Ireland initiative. It's been great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.